lots of perceptions. And then we and us statements, right? So making us all a part of the conversation because we are all aging. And then using person-centered language. This is something that you're all familiar with likely, so a person with dementia rather than a demented person. In terms of additional recommendations, so we talked about this earlier, highlighting population diversity, right? 65 and plus is not a thing. Don't do that anymore. There's a lot of nuance in all of those different age groups. Using a language of opportunity rather than conflict-oriented, right? We're not struggling with our aging process. We're not battling like it. We're not battling with it, but there's opportunity. We accumulate additional insights. There's momentum, so positive framing. And then also, again, describing demographic changes positively. Has anyone heard the phrase silver tsunami? Yeah, has there ever been a good tsunami ever, right? Like, it's not. So what does it look like to speak more positively? So on our website, we actually have a resource guide designed for municipalities that goes into this more deeply. If you visit us at our table, we can point you to the link so that you can download it. And then the last thing I want to talk about today is what you can do in terms of engagement with the Connecticut Age Well Collaborative specifically. So we created a statewide campaign in collaboration with residents across the state to invite people into a space of starting to confront internalized ageism, which just is, right? We're all a product of a society that says aging is bad. So there's nothing wrong with us, and a lot of grace and self-compassion in this work, but we have to see it to start behaving differently. So we asked people, how do you want to be described as you age? And there were a series of words that came up, and one of them was vibrant. So I'm just gonna ask you to take a minute and what's the first image that comes into your head when you think of a vibrant person with no judgment, just in noticing who shows up in your brain? If it's helpful to close your eyes, you can close your eyes, but how old are they? What gender might they be? What are they doing? So again, in the space of a Daring Dialogue workshop, we delve in more deeply, but this is what's on our posters. And it's an interesting thing to say, okay, well, what was my conditioned response? Who was vibrant? And did that person look like any of these people? So it's an interesting space to step into. The 4 other words that statewide, when we did the survey, residents selected were connected. People wanted to be described as connected, resilient, and capable. So on our website, you can start a conversation. This is another thing that you can do today. You can download our conversation guide, which contains all these posters. If you're in a workplace, this is a great lunch and learn activity. If you live with others, this could be done with a loved one. If you don't, with a friend, and just for a few minutes. And there are a series of self-reflection questions. So, who in these photos would you most want to spend time with? Or at what age do you consider someone to be old? And has your definition changed over time? So it's meant to be a wonderful entry point into what's an uncomfortable topic, right? We all want to be good people, and it's uncomfortable to embrace the notion that we might contain conditioning that causes us to show up in a way that might be harming, right? But we have to see it. Another thing that we do is we work intensively with towns through our annual Community Leaders Fellowship program, and we're currently in a new cycle with Wethersfield and Avon. Last year we worked with Newtown and West Hartford. This is our current cohort of fellows, and they work with us through the year on a project to dismantle ageism in their town. So Newtown did its own version of posters. The community fellows who live in town selected their own words. They decided what they wanted to wear. Love the motorcycle in front of the Newtown Senior Center, right? This particular fellow really couldn't figure out what word, and then bold came up, and then we moved to the conversation of, well, which of my motorcycles should I bring to the photo shoot? So really wonderful. The top rate individual is well into her 80s and swims every day. So the idea of the faces of town residents start to show up in town, and it becomes a very local flavor of the conversation, and these are West Hartfords. I happen to live in West Hartford, so I know where all these places are. That's a swing that yay, West Hartford! That's a swing that I've pushed one of my children on. So something else that we did is we decided we wanted to expand the conversation beyond older adults, because that's where the conversation mostly takes place. So we had the incredible grace of writing a book. It's called A Kid's Book About Ageism. And this is in the town of Newtown. They had a one town, one read. So Tracy Gendron is another author who wrote a really profound book about aging called Ageism Unmasked. And they decided that while the adults were reading that book, that there'd also be a children's read. It was published by an organization we worked with called Kids Company, and their mission is to create books that address difficult topics that kids are ready for. So if you're a parent, like I am, my first book that I purchased from them was a kid's book about voting. When I had a child of mine ask, tell me about voting. There's a kid's book about menstruation, a kid's book about you name it, they probably have it. There was not a kid's book about ageism, so we wrote it, and they're meant to be read child and adult together. So if you're interested, on our website, there's another conversation guide. This one goes with the book. It's free. And the idea is that grown up and child together can start to delve into these conversations and start to question assumptions. So that's fun. And I just want to finish up by talking about what's next, right? What can you do? I've mentioned a lot of things, but to just make it really concrete. So one, I'd love to encourage you to sign up for our e-news. We have a table. Karen Green, hi Karen, Karen's in the back. Karen can wave, is the administrative coordinator for the Connecticut Age Well Collaborative, and we send out an e-news once or twice a month with information about how you can participate. And we are a program that defines municipal and local governmental leadership broadly. So if you work in local government, if you're a member of a senior center staff or otherwise, great. If not, if you're connected to either professionally or just because we're all humans, humaning together, right, who live in towns, that you find a champion in local government. And the best way for an organization or a municipality to get to know us is to come and experience one of our programs. So the Daring Dialogue workshop that I've mentioned a couple of times, we're having one on June 1st. It's going to be in Southington at the beautiful Live Well campus. Shazia, are you in here? Yeah, Shazia Chaudhry. So Live Well is a really pioneering facility that you can learn more about in the vendor room as well, and they've been an incredible partner. Easy off the highway, so if you're interested, come and check us out. I think it's a really thought-provoking and fun way to spend half a day. And then the next step beyond that is we have the opportunity for one-on-one information meetings. We have lots of different programs and pathways for towns to get involved, and our hope, our aspiration is that every single town in Connecticut is doing one thing, right? Just one thing. And some, like West Hartford, are deep in. They've done the Community Leaders Fellowship. They've hosted a Daring Dialogue. They have a year-long planning process. And in other towns, you'll have an event where you use the conversation guide for 20 minutes, but we'd love to see every town engage, so set up a time with us and we'll figure out what's right for your town. And then the last, it's a very exciting opportunity to squeak on the floor of the Keeney Center. In September, on the 15th in Wethersfield, we're going to be hosting our flagship event, which is called Age Well Fest. If you sign up for our e-news, there's more information coming, but it's a two-part event, so you can come to one, the other, or both. So the evening, it's from 5 to 6:30, is a community-wide celebration of our towns who are coming to the end of the Community Leaders Fellowship program, as well as the awarding of our annual Wellspring Awards for outstanding achievement in fostering aging inclusivity. And then before that, in the afternoon, from 1:30 to 4:30, is an opportunity for all of our prior Community Leaders Fellows, so our alumni, our current Community Leader Fellows, and our potential, our future Community Leaders Fellows, which could be any of you. So anyone who works in town government or is an older adult, age 60 and over, can come find out what we're all about and delve into some deep, really specific planning around bringing your towns forward. So the last thing I'll share is one more story, so I'll read. When the Buddha started to wander around India shortly after his enlightenment, he encountered several men who recognized him to be a very extraordinary being. They asked him, "Are you a god?" "No," he replied. "Are you a reincarnation of God?" "No," he replied. "Are you a wizard then?" "No." "Well, are you a man?" "No." "So what are you?" they asked, being very perplexed. And the Buddha simply replied, "I am awake." And, what does it mean to be awake? That's a whole different thing. And another aspect of my life is I'm a yoga teacher, so that's something we could talk about at lunch. But, it's really hard to human right now, right? It's a really difficult time. The climate, the world forces, and this notion that sometimes it can be so simple in this space. A lot of people talk about feeling helpless, powerless, I can't do anything, the tide of the world, and we'll hear from multiple speakers, right? Sometimes it's outward, right? Sometimes it's about connection and kindness, and that's beautiful, and sometimes it's this really inward place. And what is it to walk through life truly awake, right? Awake to the gifts, being in his place of gratitude, awake to this idea that there are all kinds of things in our internal landscape that we neglect, and to take some time to be with them and have them be a teacher. So I'm so grateful for your time and your care, and thank you for the organizers for the opportunity to be here. Have a great day.
That was a great presentation, thank you. I'm going to shout out my age, I'm 56. And I am starting to feel some changes in my body. One was my finger stopped working one day, and I went to the doctor, and he said, "You have arthritis." I said, "I don't want arthritis." Yeah, that was his reaction as well, not for me. Our next speaker, it's very loud, very little, is Sarah Elliott Karastasios? Karastasios. Okay. Sarah is an accomplished author, social worker, and advocate dedicated to uplifting families and communities through her writing and professional work. And I'd like to introduce her now.
There we go. Good morning, everybody. That was wonderful, a very moving presentation. I'm honored to be here today. My name is Sarah Elliott Karastasios. Thank you. You did a great job. It's very hard to pronounce. I'm a licensed master social worker, director of the Portland Senior Center, and someone who has spent many years working closely with older adults, families, and caregivers navigating some of life's most meaningful and sometimes challenging transitions. But beyond my professional role, caregiving has also touched my own family in very personal ways. Like many of you, I understand that caregiving is not just a responsibility, it is an experience that can shape families, relationships, and the way we really see ourselves. Today is not meant to be like a lecture, it's meant to feel like a conversation. Because caregiving is something we learn best, I think, from each other, and as you can see, everybody in the room here. Caregiving is one of the most meaningful roles a person can step into, but it's also one of the least talked about. Many caregivers feel that they are expected to just figure it out, quietly, without training, without preparation, and without always knowing if they are doing the right thing. If you are here today, it likely means that at some point in your life, personally or professionally, someone needed support. And you stepped forward, and that matters. So let's start by recognizing who is in here, who is in the room. Supporting in this room are people supporting aging loved ones, supporting others through professional roles, navigating disability, holding responsibilities that others may not always see. Raise your hand if you help support someone in some way, a loved one, a client, a parent, a spouse, a neighbor, a member of your community. And you can keep your hands raised. There we go. And now look around the room. Caregiving can feel invisible, yet clearly it is not uncommon. You are surrounded by people who understand responsibility that is often carried quietly. You are not alone in this experience. So I'll talk about the quiet beginning. Caregiving really begins with a dramatic moment. It usually begins with something small, a ride to the doctor, a reminder about medication, a phone call to check in, simple moments. Moments that don't always feel life-changing at the time, but over time they begin to add up. One small act of support becomes another, then another, until one day you realize caregiving has become part of your everyday life. I'd like you to think quietly to yourself, or you can speak to someone next to you. That was great, Alyssa. I loved that. When was the first moment someone began relying on you a little more? Did it feel gradual? So if you'd like to take a moment and just talk to your neighbor and think about that. When was the first time anybody in any age started to rely on you? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I heard a lot of people stating the first thing is when you become a mother, and that for me was the same. Many people say caregiving begins long before they ever call themselves a caregiver. I never called myself a caregiver when I became a mother. I'm a mom, but you are a caregiver. Caregiving, for my story, caregiving entered my life early. I was caring for my mother while also holding my 5-month-old baby, learning how to be present for 2 generations at the same time. Later, I stepped in again as my father's needs increased. Today, my husband and I help care for his parents, age 86 and almost 99. And I'm very proud to say that through assistive technologies and resources provided by many people in this room, they are both at home and happy. So, at the same time, we are raising 4 children, running a family restaurant, and I lead a senior center in Portland supporting older adults and caregivers every day. This is not just something I talk about professionally. This is something I live. Caregiving often spans decades. It really evolves. It shifts, and each stage brings new questions. If your caregiving role has changed over time, you understand how much adjustment that requires. Has anybody's caregiving role adjusted over time? You can show your hand. Who would say it was an easy adjustment? Okay. So you are not alone, as you all can see here. Many people in this room are supporting someone in their personal life. Many are supporting others through their work, and many are doing both at the same time. Often feeling responsible for holding everything together, caregiving can feel isolating. but it does not have to be. So I'd like you to look around again. There is more shared understanding in this room than most people realize. Caregivers carry more than most people see. I feel like it's a very invisible role. You are making decisions, coordinating care, managing emotions, balancing responsibilities, trying to do the right thing with the information available. Your voice matters. Your work shapes lives. You create connection, and you deserve dignity and support too. So I'd like to talk about the moment that things change. Often there's a moment when something shifts, more like a realization, a small request that becomes something more, a moment when responsibility feels different. And I'd like you to take a moment to think about that shift in your own life. When did caregiving become more ongoing? Moments like that often stay with us. Caregiving is emotional work, very emotional. There's a lot of love, as Alyssa mentioned, responsibility, overwhelm, strength, a lot of strength. Some days it's more difficult for me. And guilt, a lot of guilt, meaning, often all at once. Sometimes all in the same day, at the same time. Many caregivers say, no one prepares me for this emotional part. Feeling overwhelmed does not mean you are doing something wrong. It often means you care deeply. We often hear the phrase, you cannot pour from an empty cup. Yet caregivers try to do exactly that every day. Take a moment to reflect. What fills you and what drains you? What does your cup feel like today? Just notice your answer. Awareness is often the first step towards support. And if you'd like to talk to someone at your table, a friend, person, and reflect on what fills your cup, what drains you, and what your cup feels like today. For about a minute and a half. Okay, hopefully everybody had some time to reflect on that. Is there anyone that feels comfortable talking about what might fill their cup, what might drain their cup, or what your cup feels like today? Well, my cup feels very filled today to be surrounded by all of you. And I'm very thankful for that. So many people doing good in the world. Awareness is often the first step towards support. I wrote the book, When Love Becomes Care, Real Talk for the Sandwich Generation. And I wrote that book because caregivers kept sharing similar thoughts, such as, I wish someone had told me this earlier. I didn't know what to expect. I felt alone trying to figure this out. Caregivers carry enormous responsibility very, very quietly. It is an emotional weight. It's constant decision making, invisible planning, and I wrote this book to feel like support and provide support and to help others, like someone walking beside you, reminding you that you are not alone in this experience. After working with many caregivers, I have learned people do not expect caregiving to be easy, but they do need support. People need to be heard, to be supported, to be respected, to not feel alone. Care must go both ways. Caregivers support others, but caregivers also need care. So in terms of reframing care, it's often described as a burden, but care can also be connection. Care can be meaning. Care is love evolving. Caregiving reflects how deeply relationships actually matter. If you are showing up for someone, you are already doing something meaningful, whether it's through work, client, family, neighbor. I work with a lot of people that help their neighbors, and it's beautiful to see. It's often better than you think. I was on the wrong slide. So sorry. Caregiving does not require perfection. Small shifts can make meaningful differences. Asking for help, taking a moment to breathe, setting a boundary, learning about available resources. You do not have to do everything alone. Support does exist. Sometimes we just need help finding it, and we have a room full of people to help us do that. There is a shared truth about caregiving. Everyone will give care at one point, at some point in their life. Everyone will need care at some point in their life. This is part of being human. Care connects us to one another, across generations, across professions, across families, and across communities. I think a truth about care is that caregiving is really complex. Loving grief can exist together. Strength and exhaustion can exist together. Meaning and uncertainty can exist together. Feeling stretched does not mean failure. It means you're human. And caregiving is human work. So I have another connection that I would like for you guys to do, to take one quiet moment, probably about a minute and a half, and think and discuss, what is one thing you wish more people understood about caregiving? Maybe is it how much responsibility caregivers hold? Maybe it is how emotional caregiving can be? Maybe it is how important support truly is. Awareness leads to understanding, understanding leads to better support. So you can go ahead and take a minute and a half and just take a quiet moment to reflect on things you wish more people understood about caregiving and about responsibility caregivers hold, or emotional. You can take a minute and a half to do that.